Hello, everyone. I'm going to call the meeting to order. This is our public session board meeting. Starts at 5:30, and then we will be reconvening to our private session meeting. So for attendance, we have temporary regrets from Trustee Cook. She will be joining us at 7 o'clock, but everyone else is present and accounted for. Yeah. And I need a motion for approval of the agenda. Trustee Leclerc, Trustee Nelson, all those in support of the agenda? That's carried. Thank you very much. And for attendance, I'll just mention that Trustee Burgess will be attending electronically for tonight's meetings. So I need a motion to convene to private session. Trustee McKinley, Trustee Sipkar, all those in support? That's carried. Thank you. For anybody who might be tuned in, we will be back into the public session at 7 o'clock. Thank you very much. Good evening. I'd like to call our meeting back to order. This public meeting was originally called to order at 5:30, and now we're continuing with the rest of our public agenda. As far as attendance goes, we have Trustee Burgess on the phone, and we've just recently received regrets from Trustee Cook, who thought she was going to be able to join us, but had a little complication and it's not going to be possible. So we have regrets from Trustee Cook. Our agenda has been approved to the for the evening. And so at this point, I would like to call on Trustee Nelson to give us the land acknowledgement.
Thank you. We acknowledge that we are on land and surrounded by waters originally inhabited by Indigenous peoples who have traveled this area since time immemorial. The territory within the lands honored by the Wampum Treaties, agreements between the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Lenape, all allied nations to peacefully share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. Specifically, we would like to acknowledge the presence of the Three Fires Confederacy, Ojibwe, Ottawa, and Potawatomi, and Huron-Wendat peoples. We are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture while remaining committed to moving forward respectfully with all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis.
Thank you very much. And now I'd like to call on the director for a special order of the day.
I'd ask everyone to please stand. Janice Randy Spinner passed away peacefully on December 15th, 2023. She was a remarkable person. In the realm of education and advocacy, there are rare souls who leave a mark on the hearts and the minds of those that they touch. Janice was not just a teacher, she was a mentor and a friend to every child who crossed her path. As an early childhood educator, Janice possessed the ability to connect with the hearts of young souls. An infectious enthusiasm, she instilled a love for learning and fostered an environment where every child felt seen, heard, and valued. Janice was a lifelong learner. She had an insatiable curiosity and passion for knowledge. Through the years, Janice embraced every opportunity to learn, to grow, and to adapt in a world of early childhood education so that she could serve her students with the best version of herself every day. The ripple effect of her kindness will continue to shape the generations to come. Beyond the classroom, Janice was an advocate for mental health. A Jeep lead for Eastview Horizon, she recognized the profound impact of emotional well-being and worked to create spaces that nurtured not just intellectual growth, but also emotional resilience. Janice's spirit lives on in the countless lives that she's touched. We will always find solace in the memories shared, the lessons learned, and the profound impact left by this extraordinary educator. If we could please have a moment of silence. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Houston, and on behalf of the trustees, our greatest sympathy to the family. Item E is declaration of conflict of interest. Do we have any for this meeting? Seeing none. Actions of the private session meeting.
Yes, F1, matters of property.
Trustee Leclerc, Trustee Zipper.
Sorry.
All those in support? That's carried. Thank you. Was that it? That's it. Thank you. The minutes of the board meeting. Trustee Leclerc and Trustee Armstrong. All those in support? Thank you. That's carried. Any business arising from the minutes? Seeing none. our student trustee presentation. Sir.
Through you, Madam Chair. Good evening, trustees, Director Houston, senior administration, and public. I hope that everyone enjoyed their much-needed holiday break. December was a very busy month in the GECDSB. Student councils ran festive activities for students, including spirit weeks, reindeer game intramurals, holiday markets, and more. Schools also made a point of giving back to their communities with collection of warm weather gear and non-perishable food items, as well as fundraising campaigns and charity sporting events. Vincent Massey continued its long-standing tradition of hosting their children's holiday party with activities, games, and gifts for students from its feeder schools. Sports were in full swing before the holiday break, with Riverside's wrestling team competing in a tournament and Bell River's hockey team coming in second out of 12 teams at a tournament in Niagara Falls. At our January Student Senate meeting, we concentrated on our subcommittees. So the Student Trustee Elections Committee will be reviewing the procedure before the election on February 29th, and the Student Parliament Committee will focus its work after the election and will be looking at student parliament constitutions and organizational structures. And we hope this sharing of best practices will be useful for senators to reflect on their own councils to ensure they are effective, inclusive, and accessible. The expression of interest form for the student trustee election is now open until January 25th. Students who are considering serving next year are encouraged to attend an information session on January 17th at 4 p.m. on Teams. That is tomorrow, and you can find the link in our bio, and that will be on GECDSB Student Senate, no spaces, all lowercase. And interested students are also encouraged to reach out to myself, Sarm, or Michelle with any questions at our board emails. We also brainstormed what we would like to do for our Random Acts of Kindness Week, which is February 12th to 16th. Drama clubs have resumed for their spring theatrical productions. Sports teams continue their winter season, and Riverside is in the midst of planning a February fashion show. Secondary students are preparing for final exams and working on FSCs. To support them during this time, Leamington District Secondary School is bringing in therapy dogs to help students manage anxiety and stress. And as a final note, Sarm and I are very thankful for the guidance we have received as we reach the halfway point in our terms as student trustees, and we will maintain our focus on student voice and continue to advocate for students as we continue on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Colin. Through you, Madam Chair. The student of the month for January is Kamora Buzik. A grade 11 student at Kingsville District High School, Kamora is an outstanding example of this month's theme of perseverance. There are a few students at Kingsville District High School who demonstrate perseverance as well as Kamora. During Kingsville Student Council meeting, to select a nominee for the characteristics of perseverance, everyone in the room immediately had her name in mind. Kamora has faced many challenges throughout her life, whether it be on the basketball court, at school, or in her personal life, and she has consistently shown that she can bounce back no matter what happens. While playing on the junior girls basketball team at SWASA last year, she stayed on the court for the entire game despite suffering from a bad sickness, helping her team win the gold medal. A teammate described her as someone you can always depend on during a game, since you know whatever obstacle is thrown her way, she will always be able to overcome them. Kamora has faced even greater challenges in her personal life. Since she was 2 years old, her mother has been battling cancer. Kamora continued to face life and is involved as much as possible and unafraid, regardless of frequent hospital visits and tests. As her mother's cancer progressed, Kamora kept on top of her schoolwork, participated in many school sports, and never made any mention of the things she was dealing with at home. During her mother's funeral this past December, Kamora remained resolute and grateful for her classmates, teachers, and friends who would come to show their support during that difficult time. Like her mother, Kamora is a shining example of perseverance. She's truly deserving of this recognition, and Kingsville District High School is proud to have her as a fellow Cavalier. Congratulations, Kamora, for being selected as Student Senate as the January Student of the Month for the theme of perseverance. Please come up.
Roz Salvador.
Is now exiting.
Congratulations from all the trustees. We have no delegations. That would be item J. Item K, there's no one on the speakers list. Under new business, we have L1, which is the school naming committee for the new school in the town of Tecumseh. We have a recommendation that's attached in your package, moved by trustee Buckler, seconded by trustee Sipcar. Any discussion? Pretty straightforward. All those in support? That's carried. Thank you very much. Reports to be received. M1 is the report of the Director of Education.
It's hard to believe it's January already. So I believe that the health and well-being and happiness of our staff is vital to the overall success of our organization. And it's important that everybody regards coming to work with us as an enjoyable and a positive experience. The work is, of course, at times not always easy, but we've been trying to have some fun here within our own admin building because oftentimes we forget to do that. Unlike our schools do a great job of bringing fun, we thought we would bring some fun to this building. So on Saturday, December the 16th, we hosted our first annual skate party for all of our employees that work in this building and to bring their families at Lansbury Park in the outdoor rink. Thankfully, the weather wasn't like it is now. It was actually quite mild, and we were a little worried there wouldn't even be ice. So lots of people, and you can see some of the pictures, showed up, and we did ask those that came to bring canned goods or dry food goods. And after the event, we donated it to a local food bank who were very appreciative, especially during that time of the year, to receive the donation from us. We also staged a Minute to Win It competition with a variety of games for teams of randomly assigned staff. Each supervisory officer was responsible for a team, and they couldn't have anybody from their own department on the team so that we would get to know other people in the building because we don't often take time to do that. And I'm happy to say that more than 90 of our building employees took part, and we had a great time, and we won't talk about who won because it was definitely a competition. That we followed up with a potluck lunch that everybody brought in some foods, and it was organized by our building social committee, and then that brought us into the holidays. Throughout the board, we've launched a monthly employee acknowledgement program. Recognizing Your Colleague is what it's called. And here's a list of the first staff members who've been nominated by a coworker for their outstanding work and who's nominated them. And we've sent every one of them a certificate acknowledging their colleagues that have recognized them for the work that they've been doing within the system. Prior to the break, we went to David Maxwell's, and the Attitude and Action Supporting Healthy Eating was recognized as an outstanding achievement by the Ontario Student Nutrition Program. And it was an absolute pleasure to go and have our partners from the Ontario Student Nutrition Program and the Windsor-Essex County Health Unit join us that day, among others. Member of Parliament Eric Kuchmarek was supposed to join us, but unfortunately at the last minute couldn't come, who's also a big supporter of the program, and he had a scheduling conflict. And we are very keenly interested in working together to support the upcoming National Food Program that the federal government is currently working through. The students that we spoke to were absolutely amazing that day. OSPN asked them, because they provide the food, you know, what are some of your favorite things? What are some of the things you don't like? What are some of the things you would like to see us do? One student said they don't like cucumbers. That was pretty clear. And it was interesting because we talked about diversity in food, knowing how diverse our schools were. And one of the students said, you know, it's really nice that when we do get raw vegetables, we get ranch dressing, but maybe we could look at some other things as dips, like hummus and those sorts of things. So that was some feedback that OSNPN took. And then it was absolutely fascinating. There was another student who said, you know, strawberries are $8.99 right now for a container this big. And we can't always afford them, but we do get them with our student nutrition program. So that's the reason why I like it. And then another one talked about the food groups and how it's important to have protein, but that you can't always buy it as a family because they had a number of people in their family they were trying to buy groceries for. And I thought, you know, how wonderful is this that these are our youngest learners in our schools, and they're already so cognizant of the importance of nutrition. And obviously, I'm very passionate about that as well with my background. But it was a wonderful day spending time with them. And thank you to the staff there who really support it and make it happen for the students every single day. It was also a busy time leading up to the holidays. I was pleased to be invited to the annual holiday feast at East Mercia Public School. What a spread that was unbelievable, provided by the members of the school community. So it's all volunteer, and people from the community prepare all of the food and bring it in and feed the entire school. And I know it's not that big of a school, but it's still a lot. And all of the staff, and then they stay with the students so the staff can all go and eat together during the lunchtime, and then they switched off so that the volunteers could all eat. The food was fantastic if you ever get a chance to go to participate in that event. Our Gains and Our Step students from 4 schools in the county had a fun day. They learned important life skills when they went to the movies together. They traveled with the LTGO, and one of the things that they learned is that municipal transit doesn't always arrive on time. So there they are waiting. Bell River District High School students worked with John McGivney Center on a very neat project. The robotics students from Bell River took new electronic toys. They reconfigured them so that they would be more accessible for the children who are at John McGivney who have exceptionalities, and then those were given to the students and their families as gifts. Students at Harrow Public School did some fundraising through Kids Curing Cancer and came up with a donation of $2,000 for the Leamington Hospital to help purchase a new MRI machine. Back in late November, Student Senate held its annual leadership conference at the Chicharo Club. Every one of our high schools was represented. 185 students approximately attended, and they heard from their peers who, in lieu of a traditional keynote speaker, their peers spoke briefly about their own leadership path and their own aspirations. Next is a picture of some of our teacher candidates from the University of Windsor who were doing their practicum placement at Coronation Public School during their very first time at the Faculty of Education. We hosted more than 400 student teachers so far this year, and I'm proud that we're continuing to do the work of what we can do to help the next generation of teachers and promote a great career for our young people. Things remain busy for everybody in the new school year. We still have some grade 8 nights scheduled at our high schools. North Star and Kingsville are tomorrow night, with Essex and Leamington holding theirs on Thursday evening. And we did hear from our student trustees earlier that elections are up and coming for the next year's student trustees. Hard to believe we're already at that point. And of course, kindergarten registration period is coming up, February 20th to March 1st, and schools will be hosting their open house on Wednesday, February the 21st. It would be great if any trustees could attend any of their local schools. And then just prior to the holiday break following the break, I've been a part of several meetings with our community partners to discuss some programs and some options for us to be able to work better together. Some examples would be the United Way with our On Track to Success program, as well as our Ignite Academy, our tutoring programs, and our food programs that we have in our schools, as well as in alignment with the Faculty of Education, who are doing some great pilot projects in our schools and aligning those resources better since dollars are somewhat limited. Had a meeting with Arts Windsor Essex about possibilities of what partnerships we could have, and also had the opportunity to sit down just prior to the break with MPP for Windsor Tecumseh, Andrew Dowie. We talked about some of the challenges to our budget and from funding. We talked about our capital priorities. We also shared the great things that we're doing at Greater Essex and how we're supporting our students. And it was wonderful. He was actually very keenly interested to hear more about what we're doing within the school board. And we both committed that we would schedule some future meetings together to provide more opportunities for us for future discussions. And I don't want to end on a negative note, but just this past week, on Friday, Superintendent Armstrong, myself, and Sean Mayu from the Finance Department participated in a Teams meeting with individuals from the Financial and the Accountability Unit from the Ministry of Education regarding the submission of our deficit budget and our proposed deficit recovery plan. They walked us through what the next steps were going to be in the process, and they shared that we're going to bring our deficit recovery plan forward. It actually needs to be required. It's required that it's signed off by Minister Lecce, so we're waiting for that approval, and then they'll keep us updated as we proceed. We've already started the difficult conversations as a senior team because we do have some very serious concerns about next year's school budget. So we're going to be doing a line-by-line analysis of where all of our funding comes from and where all of our expenses come in order to make some very informed decisions about what recommendations we'll be making to you for our 2024-25 budget. And at this point, we're anticipating that there will be a need to have some significant changes in order to be able to be in compliance with ministry policy. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Director Houston, for your report.
Participants are waiting in the lobby. To admit all participants in the lobby, press
*2 1.
I just wanted to make one comment about some of the things you were saying at the beginning about the students and nutrition and the
Is
and
now
snacks and all
joining.
that. The other night, my youngest granddaughter, she's 7, she's in grade 1, she accused me of being rich. I went, why do you think Grammy is rich? And she said, because you can always pay for food.
Oh,
That's what she said. And well, I found that very emotional. And to hear the things that you're saying, I know that our children are feeling it. Anyway, Trustee Sipkar.
and just before we go to Trustee Sipkar, I think sometimes we make assumptions about certain neighborhoods, but I think it's more prevalent in lots of our schools right now.
Trustee Sipkar.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. I just was going to say I appreciate that the longest point of our meeting is hearing from our director and all of the good things, but also the, I'll say the more serious things in terms of our deficit plan. And my only question that I had was, what is the timeline for that looking like, and what's kind of our responsibility as trustees? Should we ask, or should we just assume that you will be keeping us apprised? I assume that you will be, but I just am curious for timelines and things.
So we will be keeping you apprised the whole way along of the process, long before we actually come to you with a proposed budget.
Any other questions? And I would just encourage trustees to keep in mind the comments that we just heard about our challenges with the deficit budget and the budget for the next school year. There's certainly some challenges there we're going to have to deal with.
Yes. Thank you.
The next report, M2, is a report of the OPSPA director. That'd be Trustee Sip.
Sure, through you, Madam Chair. I don't have very much. We haven't had a meeting since our last, or I should say director's meeting since our last board meeting, but there is the Public Education Symposium happening next week. I know a number of trustees and student trustees are attending. I unfortunately am unable to, but I will be with you in spirit, and I look forward to hearing a report back after that.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Trustee Buckler?
Yeah, I have one, and I actually saved it on my phone, and it's unfortunate you're not going to be there. Maybe, is Julia going to be there?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, so you can share this with her, because I've been really interested in it. I've been catching tweets about this topic, and it's really near and dear to me because I see what's happening in our schools, and I see what's happening to our kids. But it says on Wednesday, the Toronto District School Board trustees will consider a motion that they're bringing forward to create a cell phone policy that has teeth in it. And I get with our education, we don't want to make more trouble for our teachers, so I want to know how Toronto's planning on doing this and what they're planning. I want to know how much you can find out about it. Part of the work will include a scan of the jurisdictions and what's been done to build in best practices. But we do see and we hear from our staff how difficult it is that we keep losing students' interest to the electronics and that it's distracting and that it's difficult. But I certainly don't want to make more work for our staff and discipline issues and all that. So I'm really interested in how this is going to look. So I appreciate whatever you can find out while you're at PES, Julia, or anybody else who's there, because this is really interesting to me. I've been following the tweets all along.
Yeah.
I have my hand up.
Thank you, Trustee Buckler. I'll just quickly respond and say, actually, this was a topic of, or a vein of the conversation we were having over dinner with Student Trustee Pine and Director Houston around the use of technology, AI, et cetera, with students. So it's, yeah, top of mind, hot topic. So I will task that to, well, both of them will be in attendance as well as Trustee Burgess. And I'll pass it over to her to speak more about it.
Trustee Burgess?
Well, thank you very much, Madam Chair, and through you, if I could respond, we'll monitor that. I would think that would probably be really shared at the Board of Directors meeting in February. But at PES, one of the most valuable parts are not only the workshops, but that networking opportunity and getting to, with other folks across the province. So we'll definitely be meeting and talking about that. There has been a regional meeting scheduled. It wasn't at first. Now it's back on for the Public Education Symposium. So I think even regionally we can have that as a bit of a starter for discussion as well. But I just want to make a remark that it was only a few years ago we were scrambling for it wasn't even a few years ago, but, it seems like yesterday, we were scrambling for every device we could get our hands on. And that students, for all the time of the lockdown, of course, and subsequently, a couple of years there, got into the habit of being device dependent. And getting out of that to either a ban or weaning is a big shift change. So it's behavioral as much as anything else as well. So I look forward to that conversation, and I'll report back as much as I can. Thanks.
Okay, the next report is M3, the trustee expenditure report. That's a required annual report. Are there any questions on that? No? The operations update, it's M4, pages 14 and 15. Are there any questions? No, seeing none. M5 is the chair's report. Pardon?
Chair, I had a question, but I was muted.
Question on the operations update?
On the trustee expenditure report.
Okay, your question?
My question is about the reporting, because it seems to me that we always have like a new form of reporting. But for mileage and then official board representative at OSPA. So I understand that this is, a year shared to different representatives through an election year. So I see that represented. But I have indeed put in expense reports with the GIMCOM that budget code for work done as a board representative at OPSA. When I've attended at a regional meeting, for example. But I see nothing really reflected there under mileage, and nor for the alternate. So I'm wondering that is that report under mileage just a mileage
just a typo. We'll fix that. Thank you.
I will reach out to read the mileage. Thanks very much. Cheers. I'm muting again.
Okay. There were no questions on the operations update. Chair's report of M5, and I don't have anything for this meeting other than to welcome everyone back to the new calendar year and hope that 2024 is a happy and healthy year for all of us moving forward. And I hope we all survive the cold weather. Trustee question period. Do you have questions for this meeting? Notices of motion.
I have a question.
Your question, Trustee Burgess?
Thank you very much. It's through you, Madam Chair. If I could, probably the Superintendent of School Development and Design, if he's present, would be able to answer, or anyone else. I wanted to ask earlier, but again, it takes me like 5 seconds in order to mute and unmute, and you're skipping through really efficiently, but I didn't get to answer it when the naming report was there, because I could have asked it then. In the discussion around the new build for Kingsville, we've had, people are very excited and talking about it. It's a big topic within the community, etc. And we've had workshops to help us understand student accommodation and what to predict. And I know we have some challenges and some interesting discussions in the future about, what's happening as far as our demographics, etc. But the big question in Kingsville is, when we open in September, are we going to have portables? And how many portables? And where will they be? When do we start taking the snapshots of enrollment and predictions in a reliable way so that those decisions are made so that in September we have as few surprises as we can predict?
Superintendent Outlander.
Thank you for the question. Through you, Madam Chair. We have already looked at those predictions. At this point in time, the students, both secondary and elementary, will fit in the school. We do have a couple flex rooms as we created over at Herman Elementary and Herman Secondary that can be used on either side, both by secondary or elementary, and there's doors that are on each side of the door that does separate the two schools within the building. And again, there's 2 of those rooms that exist at the current school, at the school that's going to be there, the K-12 in September for 24. How many students we will receive from any coterminous boards at this point is somewhat uncertain. So our predictions are that we may receive some. However, they should be able to be accommodated in the building. If we receive the entire grade 8 group from, let's say, 2 coterminous boards that had never come to our system in the past 10 years or so, or 20 years, that's something that's a little bit difficult to predict. If it does happen, it's most definitely welcome. I'll go back to a number of years ago. Some would remember, some wouldn't. The director at that time was Mary Jean Gallagher, and she always made the comment to everybody that portables are a really good thing, because from portables, especially with the way the ministry is working right now, they're looking at accommodation pressures especially. It does help us if we do put in for an addition to a particular school. So in that respect, it is a positive. But to your question, as I mentioned before, we are expecting not to have portables on the site when we start in September.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, supplemental, just to be a fine point on that, if I could, to the superintendent through you. So my response will be that right now that isn't. I just want to raise the concern. I was chatting informally a little bit about it. It's an unusual situation in that we've always been able to kind of predict what's happening with French immersion boundary for the feeder schools to the Kingsville family of schools. So, Harrow and Gosfield North, for example, are in that loop. And yet, when families have multiple kids in a family and they're registering new, maybe they got a kindergartner and they're registering and they're planning on more kids. As those kids find that maybe FI isn't their role, if they're from those other schools, they tend to sometimes take their kids back to their neighborhood school, the whole family, rather than have kids in two different schools. But that's not necessary at a dual-track school. So we may see an enrollment from FI that starts off in FI and maybe morph into English. And I'm not trying to say that that's a dead cert, but have we considered that kind of growth where, we're getting kids because of the dual-track nature of it, rather than, whatever?
Thank you again for the question, and through you, Madam Chair. We have taken into account that aspect with French immersion and English. At this point in time, we do have Jack Minor and Kingsville that are the two schools consolidating into the one. We currently do have fewer students that are going to be entering the new building come September than we do spaces for the elementary students in that particular scenario. When throughout our system the students are in French immersion, the only difference here is that Jack Minor Kingsville, living in those catchment areas, that is now the catchment area for the new K-12 schools, so they would stay if they went from immersion to English. However, all of the Leamington family of schools and Harrow family of school in the elementary, they would, if choosing to go back to an English program, would go back to their home school of the district they live, which would be Harrow and then the 5 Leamington schools. So I think that answers the question, but if not, please clarify for myself.
Okay, thank you for that. There were no notices of motion. Are there any announcements for this meeting? Seeing none, I'll just point out that our next scheduled meeting is Tuesday, February 6th. And seeing that we've reached the end of our approved agenda, I will declare the meeting adjourned and thank everyone for their time. Good night.